Did I get a horse because I wanted a relationship or did I want to prove something for my ego? I had to make that choice. If I was to work her through one of her biggest fears, biggest reactions, I had to let my ego go. I'm going to stand out here and I don't have the right answers, but together I think we can do it.
There are healers on this planet with the power to soften the suffering of mankind, yet they have remained in the recesses of the world, abused, discarded, and labeled as trash. This is The Touch of a Mustang. I am your host, Shalise Clough, and I'm here to tell the story of wild horses, Mustangs, and the humans who are discovering and sharing their gifts while working to protect their well-being and preserve their spirit so this divine power won't be lost. Join us on this quest with the wild Mustang. I was excited when Cope sent me a referral to you because a lot of times I'll ask people, but I figured if he just thought of it and sent it my way, you probably have a pretty good story to share.
Yeah, Cope's a really good friend. We've known each other for a number of years now. And it's been really cool to watch his journey with Mustangs too, from Heroes and Horses.
It's a very cool story. Why don't you start by kind of introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about how you became involved in horses?
Sure. So I grew up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I'm out in Emigrant, Montana now, and there's a little bit of a timeline to get you there. But I kind of grew up around horses and started working with them as like more of a farm hand when I was about 15. I took on a job with a Canadian warm blood Connemara cross breeding farm, which they make really neat horses. You get kind of the height from the warm blood and the disposition from the Connemara's, that pony. So I got to work with horses from, foals all the way up to competition level jumping and dressage horses. But I didn't do much for riding, just a lot of caretaking, and didn't really have the opportunity to ride much growing up. So that was really neat to get into that later on in life. So I, worked at this farm, ended up going to college out in Maine. So I went to Bowdoin College in Brunswick, Maine, to study ag, soil science. My job's technically earth science, or my degree is technically in earth science. So, I got to dig into, soil a lot in college. And then in my summertime, I would go out and I would ride horses in Montana to kind of put me through school. So that's when I got started out west.
You went pretty far in your academics before you kind of turned over and focused a little more specifically on horses, didn't you?
I did, yeah. So I got my 4-year degree. And during that time, I was also had the pleasure of working in some internships at NASA. So I got to do some little earth science coding as part of their developed national program. So I started there as a participant and then a project lead during my second project. And those were actually mainly focused around remote sensing satellite data of ranch land. So I've been able to kind of, now I'm a ranch manager. That's what I do for a living. But before I was able to do ranch management from space.
I had never even heard of that, so I didn't even know they did that. That was really interesting.
So, there are a number of platforms you can use to kind of understand this, but the one we were working on was the rangeland analysis platform. So we were just doing a little ground truthing of that data. They were only like 4-month projects, so I got to participate in that in the winter, and then in the summertime, I'd continue to come out to Montana and ride horses. And I was working as a guest rancher and then sometimes as a ranch hand, kind of depending on what gig I was on. So I ended up graduating college in 2021 and then moving full-time out here.
Was that a leap switching from academia into hands-on ranching?
Well, I didn't love being, behind a computer. I've always really enjoyed working with my hands. I feel better at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Not everyone has the pleasure of doing that. I think being able to take what I learned in academics and then see it with my own two hands and execute it, especially as a land manager, even more than a horseman. So it was a switch, but you'd be surprised how much like a bachelor's in earth science will do when you're learning about noxious weeds and talking about the difference between annuals and perennials. And I look out at the landscape and I think a lot about soil types and why some of my hay fields are more productive than others based off of where the Yellowstone River was a million years ago. So it's kind of cool how that all comes together.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, I'm sure. We have acreage and we're kind of
revegetating from building the house and stuff. And I just think, oh man, I wish I knew more to figure out how to do this better. So it's really interesting you've been able to use that.
It's been cool. I've had a lot of people to lean on, and the managers before me had a really holistic understanding of the ranch. They're the kind of people who, look out and say, I see the golden eagle nest has babies in it this year. Your rattlesnakes are back. And you're like, okay, wow. Years of experience will bring you versus, I can look at a landscape and maybe tell you that it's glaciated. These are different skills and handy in different ways. And I'm very early on in my career, and bringing that all together so young has been really special.
Tell us a little bit more about horses and what led you to get a Mustang.
Yeah, so I rode my first Mustang in Big Sky, Montana in 2020, maybe 2019, and fell in love with this McCullough Peaks gelding, who no one else really wanted to deal with just because he had some behavioral issues. And throughout riding horses in my summers, and usually I was there May through September of every year, I spent a lot of time in the saddle getting to know these horses. And Mustangs just always seem to have that extra dimension. I don't know, they just didn't have a lot of quit in them, and I relate to that pretty heartily. It's been kind of a dream of mine to own a Mustang. I didn't have my own personal horse until I adopted my first one.
That's a good way to start.
Yeah. Starting big. This is not, I wouldn't recommend to
right.
Anybody just starting in horses, let me start with a feral one. This was not my first time, training horses, starting horses, being around young ones. But definitely my first time dealing with a fully feral Mustang was my own personal horse, Echo. So, when I was dreaming of, this beautiful dream horse, whatever I was going to do next, I wanted a challenge. Now, was that pertinent timing to do just as I started this job? I manage a ranch in the Paradise Valley. Getting a Mustang at the same time as starting that was maybe the wisest thing. But I think I said something to you along the lines of I just bite things off and then choke it down, even if it's too much.
Figure it out as you go. Yeah. I think we're all doing that. Some of us just admit it a little bit more. We're all kind of diving in and seeing what happens.
Yeah, I think that's, horses in general for a lot of us. And I think that's what makes them so special is it's you're in it, you own them. You kind of have to figure it out. You can't just let them go rot in a field there. This is what you signed on for.
What went into that decision to yes, you are going to go get an untouched Mustang. This is going to be your first horse. That's what it's going to be.
Yeah. I did what a lot of us do when you go to an auction. You're like, I'm just going to look.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to look, and I have acreage, and I needed a horse to move cows on, and I, needed a guide horse. So I had a good feeling I was coming home with something, and I had a corral that was set up really well for Mustangs. It was had a run-in stall and everything. So I showed up to the auction thinking, let's just see what they have, see if there's anything special. And there's this strawberry roan sitting in the corner, this little mare. Cool. Yeah. There was just very little thought about it. I thought I would spend hours going and looking through the horses and trying to figure out which one was the best one and take a look. And I just looked at Echo and I was like, yep, okay.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
Sometimes you just need to look. That's kind of the same thing that happened to me. I saw her picture and I was like, then I got too far in, turn around. Tell us about how that journey's been from, getting her.
Yeah. Echo's start was kind of tumultuous even at the auction. We loaded her out of the Hamilton, Montana facility, so way in the western part of the state. And we had the trailer all backed up, and you know how they're going to open the chute and the horse kind of shoots forward.
Yeah.
So Echo shot forward, and the person who was attending to my trailer door, he was not very experienced, and he was kind of excited, and he slammed the trailer door on her shoulder and cut her open. So Echo's first introduction to people in trailers was
not the best, not ideal.
Yeah, and then she panicked and backed up and then tried to go again, and then he shut the door on her again. And that was I have it on video. It's the toughest thing for me to watch, where I'm just this horse isn't even in my hands yet, and she's already getting beat up on. So kind of Echo coming in, coming home, I'm looking at her I am so sorry. We're going to do better from here. I'm not sure what we're going to do first, though. So let me get you in your pen and we'll talk. So, I had her in a halter. I then put a halter on her in the chute, and she drug that thing around for 3 weeks. And, The first touches, of course, a lot of us, I put a glove on the end of a little whip and started with the glove and kind of moved my way on up that rope. And pretty soon we were able to be around one another. And something that's interesting, with Mustangs, I've never met a more intuitive and sensitive creature. The first time I ever laid hands on Echo, her entire body shook, just head to toe. She was like, this is not a horse that looked at me. And this is one of the reasons I say, like, don't get a Mustang as your first horse.
Yeah, no, that is true. That's good advice to not start with a Mustang.
So yeah, don't start with Mustangs. It's a magical moment, for us horse people, because we know, like, I'm a predator. She knows I'm a predator. It's a wild horse. But it's not like the movies. She's not gonna go, oh my God, this is my person. You've rescued me. Thank you for bringing me home to your ranch. Mm-hmm. I am your first horse, and we're going to be best friends. And part of me is just like, that'd be nice, though.
Yeah.
I'd love
Absolutely. I think a lot of us envision that too, that it is going to be magical in that way. And I agree, it is a magical experience, but it's very different from that. It's not just some instantaneous connection and all beautiful from there. It's a challenge.
It's messy. Yeah. And more than anything, for Echo, I had to be consistent. I had to be fair. And, you kind of come in, I've worked a lot of quarter horses, you come in with like a certain set of rules, like this is, in order to be clear, this is the way I'm going to communicate with you. These are the drills I like to do before I, put 30 days on a horse, before I swing a leg over the saddle. I had to throw every single one of those rules out the window to start my Mustang. We're not running on my clock anymore. This was like a mutual clock in which I'm trying to push her forward, and Echo's sitting there going, "Earn it."
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. They do make you earn it a little bit more, or prove yourself to them.
Yeah. Can't skip steps. Anytime I wasn't fair, that's when we would have problems. And that's, it's one of the reasons I named Echo Echo. She's, over time, her name has become more and more her. But at the start, I was like, I've been working horses for 8 years now before I got Echo. I want her to be a reflection of everything I know. And I was excited about that. Like, oh, she's going to be cool. And then for the first couple of months, I went like, I don't know anything.
Yeah.
About horses.
Yeah, it really does make you kind of question yourself, because a lot of things you've been taught, you have to kind of go back in and reanalyze and relearn some things and get some new ideas going.
It's humbling. It's really humbling. And, Echo and I were able to accomplish a lot together very quickly. We got our first touches in. I laid her down in the first month of her being home. So I was able to, I'm sure you've seen people do this, lay a horse down and then touch them all over. And that was honestly a big breakthrough for us. We were able to get right into saddling after that. And previously it was, getting around Echo's body was a really big deal to her. And I guess with Mustangs, we're continually proving ourselves not to be the predator. But how do you become a leader without, and how do you establish boundaries? How do you, show these horses, like, I am someone you can rely upon. I am strength for you, but not instill a fear response in them. And they come pre-wired. Every horse is a little different, and Echo came very, very flighty. And, how do you balance that? How do you develop draw when there's so much drive in a creature? That was the project of Echo very early on, and still is under saddle today, but she's just a heck of a lot more broke now.
And a lot of the things that we're taught to do kind of show them the opposite. Mm-hmm. You're scared of me already, and now I'm doing something even scarier, and you should just manage it. And so I think that is where a lot of our relearning has to take place, to kind of consider how we're approaching them and how that's what they're learning and how they're taking that.
Yeah. There's, I found it really easy to flood Echo more than most horses I've worked with previously. Her brain shut down and she either went into freeze or flight mode way faster than a lot of the, barn bred, pasture bred quarter horses I had dealt with in the past that had been raised around humans. Echo, I bought her and she was labeled by the BLM as a 4-year-old. Probably more accurately, she was closer to 6 or 7 based off of her teeth. So it puts her about 9 years old now. And taking us, she would have been 6 coming out of the wild then, taking a 6-year-old that's like everything that Echo had known before me was this is how I survive. And now you have to rewire that, like
Mm-hmm.
you're going to see something flap and I want you to stand still. And you can't be mad at her for, you can't be mad for their responses. And the way that Mustangs will often hold on to those longer than quarter horses. Like with quarter horses, you're like, yeah, I got him slicker broke. I spent a couple days doing that. With Echo, is like, I spent 4 months sacking her out with pretty much everything I could find on the ranch to desensitize this horse with, feed bags, Gatorade bottles filled with rocks, everything is saddle pads, slickers, whatever, tarps. And, doing that without flooding her, that was a really, really big project. And she's still every once in a while, like you give her 2 weeks off, and a lot of those instincts will kind of sneak back in because they were there for 6 years before she entered a world in which she's not always on the run.
Yeah, she's expected to act completely different than everything she's known.
Yeah, and I think the herd teaches her a lot of that too. We've got 7 other horses here that were some of them born and raised on this ranch, and they're able to show her a little bit like the tractor is going to come in here and it's going to bring us a bale, and it's not here to eat you. So they're better at teaching than I am in a lot of those sort of situations. I spent a lot of time with other horses in the pen with her who are able to show her, we can exit that state. It is a lot easier to be with her than away from her.
What did that look like when you could tell that she was getting flooded, and how did that kind of change your approach?
It's when you see a horse shut down, and Echo would shut down. Her legs would lock up, and she would, especially in her hind end, just like really lightly shake. And it was just her, like you could see, she's like, I can't go left or right, I can't go up, I can't do anything. I'm just here, and this is too much. And that's where you're like, all right, I'm gonna wait for the moment. You just wait for that one moment where that brain turns back on. Maybe their eye softens just a little, or suddenly that shaking pauses for a moment, and that's your release, and you just get out as soon as you can. And the more you engage um, that mindset of them softening just for a moment, that's you start to return to that state so much faster. But with Echo, it was so subtle. It's not going to be a huge lick and chew all the time. It's not going to be a big deep breath and suddenly everything's hunky dory. It was going to be a moment of just, oh, okay, I'm not dead, and you release right there. And it just made my timing for other horses a lot tighter, I think. So Echo was hugely helpful there because I'm sure I've been really sloppy with colts in the past.
Yeah, it's a learning process for sure to figure out what works and what works well and what works in the way that we're wanting it to. How long have you had her now?
Got her in June of 23, so we're coming on 2 years now. So I brought her home June 3rd, and then I put my first ride on her August 9th. And it was a total journey and like physical injury for me too. So I ended up putting my first ride on her the 9th. I put less than 30 days on her. I would have put about 15 days on her before I came off another horse I was working with at the time and had a major head injury. So I got a pretty bad TBI. Now, again, this is not recommended. I did not go to the hospital right away. I had a lot going on my plate on the ranch. I run all the irrigation and kind of, all of us like horse girls, we just like brush the dirt off. We're like, we're fine. That caught up to me later, but I continued my 60-day start on Echo through that TBI. And the level of trust that it took in her and the level of connection I had to have looking down at her, like, if I hit my head again, I'm dead. So let's do this. Please don't.
Yeah, that is scary. How has that injury, how did that affect you moving forward?
Honestly, when I trusted Echo enough to keep going with that start, even through that injury, I think it gave me a lot of like self-confidence, honestly. Just like, I'm going to keep showing up. I have the grit to do this. And that was something you have to prove to yourself every day. I work, in the warm seasons when the ranch is like fully up and running, I'm spending 7 days a week, like 12 to 14 hours a day at work. So when you're working 7 to 7 and then working your Mustang 7 to 9 p.m. and then going to bed and then waking up and doing it all over again, and that consistency, even when you're tired, when your when your vision's funky and your ears are ringing and you're on your
Okay.
horse anyway, because I brought that horse home. I had something to prove and I had something to do for her. And I wasn't just gonna start riding her and then leave her be. Like she deserved more and I did it for her. And she took me exactly where I wanted to go because of it.
Yeah, talk a little bit more about the consistency and kind of how you saw that at play.
You always feel like there's someone else out there who's going to be more worthy for your horse.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime I've looked to pass Echo off to someone else, like, gosh, help me with this problem, it really hasn't worked. So, my first 3-4 months with Echo, when I was out there every single day working with her on the ground, her ground start's really lovely now because we had to do a lot of groundwork before I felt comfortable throwing a leg up on the saddle every time.
Yeah, which is smart. It's smart to be good on the ground before you're moving on.
Yeah, and she's had a really lovely ground start, and that consistency of coming out there every day. After a while, she stopped stepping away from me. Suddenly, it was her standing still, and I had an ear. And it's weird, but that was my win for the day. I walked
Yeah.
into the pen. I had a halter in my hands, and she said, "Okay," like just one thought, and then maybe she would step away. And with her, it was always going to be that subtle. And until one day, this horse is facing up. One day this horse is taking a step towards me, and then suddenly a partnership is building. So that consistency, that was the most good she ever has is consistency for me. And it doesn't always mean, we're doing everything right. We've had some serious setbacks. Gosh, trailer loading Echo was its own.
Yeah, well, yeah. She didn't get the best introduction, so. And it's tricky anyway if you think we're putting horses in this little box.
Yeah, it is tricky, and this is where so after I put my first 60 days on her, we were heading into shipping in Montana. So we're headed into the fall. So we've got to do a bunch of gathers before we can go ahead and ship calves. So at that point, I was like, you know what? Guess it's time to go move cows on this Mustang. See what happens. So we went to go. You can't really get to any of these gathers without getting in her trailer first. So this is where now she's on my time. You got to get in the trailer. I've got stuff to do. I've got these gathers I've been invited to. This is what I want to do. And that's when Echo, this is when these Mustangs go, no. Oh,
Yeah,
my
that's what you think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what you're thinking, but this is going to take what it takes. And I had to recognize that with her. I had a horse trainer who invited me to a gather, and she's like, "Oh, I'll get your horse in the trailer." I've taught hundreds of horses how to trailer load. And in my head, I'm like, oh my God, thank God.
Yeah, I don't have to worry about it.
I don't have to
Perfect.
worry about this. Finally, I've helped with this. I pretty much spent my first 3 months with Echo completely by myself. I live and work largely by myself, with the exception of my fiance who lives here but doesn't always ride horses with me.
Mm-hmm.
So with trailer loading, this horseman tries to get Echo in the trailer. She spends like an hour, and I'm watching her near on beat on my horse. I'm standing there like, I respect this person too much to say like, you've completely lost her. I've spent 4 months working with Echo. I know the look in her eye, and
Yeah.
there's been no release, and there's nothing for her to hunt. There's nothing for her to seek, and you've completely lost her. And eventually, that horse trainer is like, "This might be the first horse that I can't do it with."
Wow.
These Mustangs. You just there's a reason we breed horses. We breed horses for good disposition. This horse doesn't have a good disposition, and I'm looking at Echo, and I'm just like, man, I brought one home that doesn't have a good disposition. Like,
Yeah, that kind of sits with you when you hear that from especially someone you respect, you know?
yeah. So, someone who's been training horses for decades, looks at you and says, your horse is no good.
Yeah.
You look at yourself, and she's my Echo. She's my reflection. It's like, man, I'm no good. So
Yeah.
Echo held so many heavy expectations. The poor horse had so much resting on her shoulders. She had 8 years of me, wanting a horse, working horses, training horses. Like, now this one's mine. This one is my reflection. What are you going to be? And Echo's like, I'm going to be exactly what you need every time.
I love that.
So she sure didn't get in the trailer, and that sat with me that winter. And, I finally decided that fall to recover from my head injury. So I started resting more. I said, Echo, we'll pick this back up. We'll see what we're doing, maybe like later in the winter. So winter comes around, and I have a really good friend who's also a horse trainer. All of us horse girls have all these great friends. And I was telling her the story of what happened with Echo and during shipping with trailering. And she's like, I can have your horse in the trailer in 20 minutes. And once again, I make the mistake and I go, oh my goodness, thank goodness.
Yeah, getting your hopes up. Like, this has probably been weighing on you because we all want our horses to succeed. Yeah. We all kind of wonder, well, maybe it's me.
Yeah. This is my reflection, and she can't even get in a horse trailer. I'm a failed horse trainer. I ride for a living, and this is what I have in the pen. Poor Echo holding all these expectations again. And I say, okay, thank goodness you're able to do this, because she really, flips over backwards, Echo threw herself down on her side and just laid there covered in sweat, breathing the first time we were trying to get her in the trailer. I mean, huge reactions. I didn't even want to have her saddled. I thought she'd break my horn coming up and over on herself. And her reactions were always like, it was freeze and then explode. My good friend came over, and we went to trailer load, and gosh, she spent 2 hours with my horse, and Echo's just shaking head to toe and frothing with sweat. And I don't want to say anything because there's so much here. It's like, I don't want to insult you and tell you, please don't do this anymore. And Echo's sitting there just like, Mom, like,
yeah,
what are you doing? Like, this isn't going to happen in 20 minutes. What are you thinking? And it didn't. The recommendation I got was, put her in a pen with the trailer, put the food and water in the trailer, and either she gets in or she starves. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this my way. So I put her back in the pen. I give myself a couple days to think about it. And, I'm all of these expectations I had again, all of this, I finally decided, I'm going to do this for my horse. And I think that means I have to do it. I park my trailer at the bottom of a mountain. Our whole place is hills. Put the trailer brake on, and I just start working Echo at her pace. And I let her spook away from the trailer. I let her do it. But if she's going to spook away from the trailer, we were going to back up the mountain. And it wasn't a violent thing. I didn't have to lay a hand on my horse to get her in the trailer. I didn't have to flag her. Didn't have to beat her or something. I had someone say, like, hit her with a cattle prod. I'm like, I wouldn't dare. This horse is, and what that trainer did that day was declare my horse counterfeit. Just the same way, the first trainer did. Your horse has a bad attitude. This horse is no good. The second trainer said, your horse is counterfeit, which we know in the horse world is not something you can come back from. A counterfeit horse is not something you can come back from. And I'm sitting here going, oh my God, she's counterfeit. I've picked one of the bad ones. I picked one of the bad Mustangs. I'm sure they exist. Now, I haven't started enough to know whether these horses exist. So back to trailer loading. I just start backing her up the mountain. I give her the choice. Like, you can either get in the trailer or sniff it or think about it or put a foot in it or give me something, or you can drive away from it. And if you're going to back up, we're just going to back. So up the mountain we went. And I got great calves that winter because we went up that mountain.
Good workouts.
Hundreds of times. Back up the mountain. Nothing violent, and her back is epic now. You just lift up the lead rope, and she's
yeah. And what a good example of, like, you're always training your horses. No matter what you're doing, they're always learning something.
Yeah, and so up the mountain she went over and over and over again until suddenly 1 foot was in, then 2 feet, then 3, then 4, and every time, I would get a win. I would get a sniff. I'd get an ear. I'd get a moment of softness, and I would accept it, and I would love on her. Just be like, dude, this is the best. And I would put all of the love in my heart and try to let go all of those awful expectations I was putting on my shoulders. I'm standing in the trailer like, what am I doing to my horse? Like, did I get a horse because I wanted a relationship, or did I want to prove something for my ego? And Echo was like, I had to make that choice. If I was to work her through one of her biggest fears, biggest reactions, I had to let my ego go and say, I'm a total failure of a horse trainer. Whatever. If you get in, I really hope that I'm going to stand out here, and I don't have the right answers, but together I think we can do it. And, in 3 days, Echo was in there. Now she self-loads. You just toss the halter over her and she goes. That was like a big moment for me where I was like, yeah, this isn't about me.
That is a huge piece to it, because a lot of us do get Mustangs, we have these high expectations and we have these magical images in our head of, the horses that are trained really quick and really easy is what it looks like from the outside. And then you get in there and I think you said something like that before. She kind of gave you what you needed every step of the way, which was some personal insight that, yeah, we're going to have to step back and work together on this if it's going to be successful.
Yeah, it was, you kind of have to, you can't be in it for anything other than loving the horse. It won't work otherwise. They'll know the difference, and she sure did. And that was a huge turning point for us. After that, I went ahead and trailered her over to a clinic and rode her in a cow horse clinic and, kept riding her all spring. And, I put her away for a little while, and I made another mistake. So that spring, I had a lot going on. So spring on the ranch is the most busy time. We've got to get all of our irrigation started up. We've got to get out there in the tractor and take care of our fields. It's also the same time I've got to put rides on all of the other horses. So my job was ramping up, and I thought, who someone else would probably be better for Echo to put the first couple of rides a season on her. Maybe just send her off for 2 weeks to a trainer and go ahead and just ride her when she's back. Let someone else get the green off of her. I'm still recovering from this head injury. And so I sent her off, and, again, I'm getting these comments, this horse is stubborn. She just doesn't really have a great mindset. I don't feel comfortable putting a leg on her. I think she might be dangerous, and, all these things. And I'm starting to develop these feelings about my horse again, like, oh my God, I failed my horse, not even this professional trainer, she rides horses for a living, wants to get on her. And I brought her home, and the same thing I always did, just looked at her and went, all right, no one else is going to do it, so it might as well be me. So that's what we did. I rode her all summer long.
I think that is one thing that makes the relationships really powerful, is they do develop and kind of lean on the connection that we're willing to provide them with, that they're looking for more individualized relationship than some other horses might be that just go from, owner to owner or trainer to the next thing. They really do, I think, rely on that relationship.
Yeah, it was a kind of mindset shift for me too, of viewing setbacks with Echo. So, viewing trailer loading as like a failure on myself. Like, I'm not enough of a trainer. And, my friend and I have laughed about it since. The one who tried to get Echo in the trailer initially, we've laughed about it since then, because she's like, I needed that too. Echo held up a mirror and said, you think you can do something with the horse in 20 minutes without getting to know them first? But she's happy to hold that mirror up to anybody who wants to look at it. It's gone.
Yeah.
And, you almost have to kind of just work with their mindset and not take it personally either. So it's that letting go of that ego again. So, Echo to this day, everyone's, she'll see we round the corner here and there's the skid steer and it moved. She'd be like, oh.
It still caught me off guard.
And now I just laugh. I'm just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
You're feeling there. Like, what a funny thing. And I think that, people aren't necessarily always used to horses that don't always, she doesn't have quit in her, and neither do I. We're both like that. And it's not like Echo's, I don't, our relationship is at the start, and I'm curious to see how this develops. But as of right now, Echo is always going to go. And you just have to be like, it's okay. Like, just laugh it off. She's not there to hurt you. She's just got that extra bit of spark in her, and you've got to love her for it.
I think relaxing into that, not making so much out of every interaction. I definitely had some of the same experience where I'm like, I should not have a Mustang. I should not have a horse.
Yeah.
But relaxing into it and just kind of being like, yeah, it's okay. It's okay that whatever, they still spook at the same thing that they've seen 20 times before or something, that you're like, well, that surprised me. I didn't expect you guys to react that way.
It's like letting go of expectations of what a broke horse is supposed to look like. Because the same horse, I tack up at our tack shed. Every day I ride her, and I ride her most days. And she'll still, I get the saddle pad out of the tack shed, and she'll do that mare snort, like the, and you're like, oh my goodness, how many times have this saddle pad come out of this tack shed? Like hundreds, thousands. I've even done the whole run out of the tack shed with the saddle pad, run back in, run around her, hours of that and desensitizing. And after a while, I just giggle. I just go, yeah, whatever.
Which I think is one of the beautiful things about Mustangs, if they're trained right, is that they do really stay themselves. You know, they stay present in the world around them. They're not just like checking out and zoning out and going along with the agenda, which, you know, a lot of us think that we would prefer. I definitely was like, come on, let's just do this all my way. It'll be fun. It'll be great. But when you can kind of embrace that they're still these beings interacting with the world in such a heightened way, it can bring really cool things to your life.
Yeah, and they have like different characteristics that are, she's so light. You say like, oh, this is a really flighty horse, this is a really reactive horse. And now under saddle, we've taken reactivity and we've brought lightness. Like it doesn't take much to get Echo collected nowadays. It doesn't take much to drift her left and right with your legs. This horse is everything on everything is so sensitive. That sensitivity is something like, oh man, like I wish you were duller. It's like I can't wish for a different horse. I got exactly what I needed, even when I don't want it.
Yeah. Well, and I think also those reactive sensitive horses, they're also the very best communicators. Like you know what's going on with them. You're not guessing or often being taken by surprise unless you've kind of ignored what they've been trying to tell you. They're really good at communicating how they're feeling and how the situation is sitting with them.
Yeah, and I guess obviously every horse being a little different. I happen to have one of those really expressive ones, and that works well for me. We're both kind of like that. We wear our hearts on our sleeves, and Echo, she's so easy to read. It's a really good way of putting it. Like, great communicator, and I love teaching people groundwork now with Echo because she's so sharp, so easy to talk to. She's cued into every part of your body, and she plays it like a game now. And you can go out in a field with Echo now, and you can catch her eye, and I can send her with my hand, and she'll lunge around me just in a big old pasture. And it's because we've had so many of those conversations. All it takes for me is this, and to send her off, and it's really wonderful.
Tell us about what you guys have been doing recently with your journey with your Mustang.
This past winter, I didn't really have any goals of entering any competition. But I had a friend of a friend enter onto the wait list of the Big Sky Ski Drawer. And he didn't have a horse. He just really wanted to try it. And this is an event that I've, watched for years now. I lived in Big Sky for a while, and it was such a dream for me to do it. And this person gets a hold of me and says, "Hey, I've got someone on the wait list for Big Sky. They're looking for a horse. Any chance that you've got one that you would enter?" I'm like, "Oh, well, I've got a pen full of broke horses, but I've got one that's fast, and it's Echo." And she knows her feet, and I rode her a lot this winter, and I said, "You know what? If you get off the wait list, I'll run with you. Let's just do it." Not thinking any chance we get off the wait list. There's no way. Everyone wants to enter the Big Sky.
That'll probably be fine. Yeah, it won't be this year.
It'll be fine. Like don't worry about it. Like just call me next year though when we try again.
Yeah.
But I took it as an excuse to get back on my horse. So I went ahead and just started dragging things. Drag firewood back from our wood pile. I would spend miles and miles a day on Echo. I make a lot of my own schedule in the wintertime, and I just made time every day to ride my horse, which was really special. So I rode for 35 days straight, and on like day 35, I got a phone call from my skier, and he said, "Hey, we're off. We got the ski drawer in 8 days. You good?"
Yeah. How did that feel?
Oh my God, I was having a beer with some friends here in town, and when I got the phone call, and my heart dropped in my chest. I just, and it's the same as earlier. I bite off more than I can chew and choke it down anyway. But trying to do things off of Echo's timeline has historically not worked. And so I'm sitting there thinking, like, I have no faith in my horse. There's no way. There are snowmobiles doing backflips and pyrotechnics, and like 3,000 people attend this event, and we're going to be, not only are we doing this in front of all these people, so it's the humiliation is going to be huge if we don't do it. And I was immediately got in my head and got in my ego. Like, I have to be able to do this. Like, I'm a horse trainer. I'm a rancher. Like, I don't show up to events and not make it point A to point B. And I put all of these expectations on my poor horse. And so I spend the next 8 days putting Echo through what we began to call the gauntlet. And so I'd been running hot laps with Echo across the ranch, so like 2 to 3 miles a day at long trots and galloping a good deal of it, completely solo. Again, this is not wise to do this. I just, I've often, I've got a paramedic for a fiance, and that makes life a little bit easier.
Yeah.
I'm just ripping around this ranch all winter long. And yeah, so we've got 8 days to prepare, and I've got a whole village. I've got a whole village of people who show up for me. So they would wait along my route, and they would wave tarps. I had a friend setting off fireworks. We had flags. I said, pump your truck music. And, we had a bunch of gatherings, and we started dragging skiers, and we started prepping Echo. So I had 2 practices with my skier, and then I had, probably 5 or 6 practices with everybody, making as much noise as we could come up with out here on the ranch. And that was coming into Friday of the Big Sky Ski Tour. Yeah. So
wow.
That was,
and then how was it when you got there?
Echo was really unexpected. So we got her unloaded, and this is like a major blizzard trying to get there. So we ended up showing up the Thursday before the event, spending the night, and she's handling all of this like a champ. She's oddly zen. This horse has had 40 days of miles and miles and miles of riding, and I'm looking around, and everyone's got these gorgeous horses. This is a lot of people end up riding appendix horses, so thoroughbred crosses, or these really big, tall, beautiful quarter horses. A lot of this is what enters the ski tour. I think Echo is one of 2 Mustangs there. Believe it or not, the pen right next door to us, there was another Mustang right there, and that was really
nice. Neat. Yeah, you're like,
but that
somebody else there with us that's maybe a little crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Someone else who's just a little bit more like us, just giving it a shot. So
yeah,
we were entered into the novice division. It was my first trip down a course. It was Echo's first trip down a course, and it was my skier's first trip down a course. We were sitting there at the start line, and I'm just looking down at Echo like, what are the odds that was enough? Because she's not afraid to tell you if you haven't prepared enough. This horse is completely unafraid of communicating what she means.
Right.
And Echo was completely zen, just like, there are horses weaving all about. A really funny moment right before we went, we had this woman come up to us and waiting at the start line, and she goes, "Is that a Mustang?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I got her about a year and a half ago." And she goes, "Yeah, you can always tell they all look like they're put together from spare parts, don't they?" And I was just like,
"Geez, that stung."
Well, and it was one of those moments where you just kind of like have to laugh, just like, no one believes in this horse. Hardly believe
the underdog. Yeah.
I was just planning. I was like, I'm going to ride her like I love her, and I'm going to ride her like I trust her, and I'm going to ride her like she's going to take me to point B. But these Mustangs just have this reputation, and I'm sitting there, and I've got the weight of my own ego, and I've got the weight of, what if everybody after this thinks Mustangs are too crazy to take through to do this stuff? You want to represent the breed well. They've got such a reputation in the horse world. And we're sitting there at the start line, and this woman says, "Oh, your horse is trash." And I'm like, whatever. We're going to ride.
I'm used to that by now, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, everyone, she's
everybody doubts her.
She's counterfeit, she's ugly, she's ridiculous, she's stubborn, she's, not worthy, and I'm, this horse is just not worth it. And I'm not there going, this is my first one. I love her more than anything, and, none of what you guys think matters. I'm going to do this my way. So we were third up, and you get to run twice. So you run with your draw. So you run once with the person you signed up with, and again with your draw ride. So I had a randomized person I rode with later that day. So I was first up with my skier, Dakota, who was fabulous. He's really quick, really positive, and has never once said anything but that Echo is a badass. He had so much love.
That's what team you need.
Horse. Yeah, he had so much love and support for that horse. I had so many people there who loved and supported that horse, and we took on that course, and we ripped it. We absolutely crushed it, start to finish. Like, there was a Jumbotron, there's crowd. Echo didn't look at any of it. I didn't even put my legs on her. I didn't over and under barrel racer style. I just put my hands forward and just said, I hope it's enough. Like, I love you. Please go. And Echo just launched.
She locked in.
We had the fastest time of the day. We held the We held the fastest time of the day for 30 horses. And to sit
Wow.
there, we got to sit there at the start with this little counterfeit spare parts Mustang and the announcer over and over going, that was a quick time, but it wasn't as fast as that Mustang. That was a quick time, but no one's got anything
That's
on it.
awesome.
Over and over and over again. One of the final teams, I think 45 teams went that day. One of the final teams beat us by 0.4 seconds, so 4/10 of a second. So we ended up coming in second that day, but I didn't care one bit. My horse,
I mean, yeah, that's amazing.
Echo, is just, she just flew. It was one of the best moments of my life to be on a horse that moment was just like, okay, I trust you.
Yeah.
It
It
was
probably
enough.
represented that whole journey that you'd gone through with her.
Yeah, it was really neat. So the top three teams in the novice division uh, actually run the next 2 days in the division up in the sport division. So not only had she kind of brought a little money home that day, she went ahead and moved us up, and I got to run in the sport division. So Echo ran 3 more times that weekend and ended up taking ninth overall. So she just got faster and faster and faster, and never once skipped a beat, and was completely perfect at the start line. Just like, all right, mom, I get it. You thought I wouldn't. Oh,
Yeah. You doubted me.
you
Not as
doubted.
much as everybody else, but there was a
Just,
little bit there.
there was a little bit there. So to be able to accomplish that, like, it was, that was one of the coolest experiences of my life by a long shot, and one of the hardest things I've ever done was to take a Mustang from where she was to where she is now. What a joy to own from these horses.
Yeah, they definitely take you on a journey. They definitely teach you lessons, mirror what you need to know where you're missing.
Yeah, yeah, and you can't. I couldn't give up on her. Again, this is my first horse. There was no giving up on Echo. The only path was forward, but it was never going to be exactly what I envisioned it, and I wouldn't do it any other way.
Yeah.
I Every other horse I work with, I bring more sensitivity. I'm able to listen to their cues a little better. I'm able to catch those little ones only because I had to.
I agree. I think they do make us better. They definitely help us grow, teach us, help us see the things that we're maybe just brushing over and ignoring or don't even realize at all. Help us
Yeah.
see that.
Then suddenly you're holding a check and you're looking at your mirror like, wow, man, I didn't even, I was just showing up to show up. Suddenly,
Yeah. You made a commitment you didn't think was going to happen.
no, I did not.
Yeah. So are you guys going to do it again next winter?
Yeah, we're addicts now. Yeah, she loves to run. When we do, that we do our hot lap around the ranch, or there's like a specific route we used to do training for the skijoring, and I have to be careful now because if I take friends to do that, I can watch Echo's ears go. Do we get to gallop this part?
She's ready to go.
She's ready to go. She continues to be that way. So it was neat. I got invited to do a number of ski jors after that, and I kind of just let it be for the season. I was like, Echo, you did exactly what I wanted to do. I'm not going to just keep piling on more because you gave me a lot. So I
Yeah.
didn't, I was invited to do Red Lodge and Wisdom and stuff, and just decided, was like, you know what, good job, Echo. See you next year.
Yeah. Which that takes a lot. Not everybody will do that. You feel like you're winning or doing good, you got to keep going. But I think that's huge to kind of count your successes and to acknowledge like we had a success. Even you talked really early on about just like the tiniest, smallest success, an ear flick at the right time or whatever. And you're like, yay, that's great. All the way to, celebrating this big, huge success that came after a lot of work and partnership together.
I hope she continues to surprise me, and I continue to surprise her, and like the kindness and consistency I'm able to bring. Since then I've been able to use her to work cows, and she'll climb me to the top of the mountain, and she does all of this completely barefoot. She ran the ski jor completely barefoot. These horses are engineered, just a little different, and I guess, until I work with more, maybe I'll be able to make some more sweeping claims, but I can just say in the case of mine, like that is a really special animal, and I'm really blessed to be a part of her life. Much more
Yeah.
so than she's lucky to be here. She gets plenty of feed, but I'm way luckier to have her.
What is advice you would give people who are thinking about getting a Mustang or jumping into it?
I don't know. Do it all. Do it for the right reasons, and if not, they'll find them for you.
Yeah.
Go in with love. Do it for love. Don't do it for
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah. I think that's huge. And also how you were committed to it. I think that's maybe the biggest piece, because some of them are going to get hard. It's going to be tough times. You're going to have to fight that self-doubt and the discouragement. But if you're committed, like, you'll figure out a way. And it's neat
Yeah,
to see how you guys did that.
the path forward isn't this, and I mean it's not with anything, but with Mustangs in particular, like they're gonna have bad days. These aren't machines that you can just go and work on. Like she's gonna wake up on the wrong side of the bed. You know, your horses will, and there are gonna be days where you think I didn't do a single thing right except for show up,
Yeah.
and sometimes that's all you need to do. So yeah, just what a lucky thing to own a horse in the first place. They're not something to be picked up and put in a pasture. They're not ornaments. They're working animals. They're things that are meant to be used and developed and honed. And you can't expect to just pick them up after a couple months off and pick them up exactly how you put them down. They're wild things. All horses are like this too, but um, they're that consistency, that job, that it matters.
Are there any ways that your perspective on horsemanship has changed after having her that we maybe haven't touched on?
It's that like not taking it personal aspect. There's every horse is going to be bringing their own, set of, drive and draw. Like, do they want to be with you? Do they want to drive away from you? How much fight do they have? Are they a flight? Are they a freeze? Like, there's all of these things that the more and more you work horses, you see these characteristics start to pop up. Like, oh, she reminds me of this other horse I rode 3 years ago. And they're all going to be a little different. And meeting them where they are, that's been exactly what Echo has been able to bring to me. I had the pleasure of riding Echo in front of Buck Brannaman last summer, and I got to do his clinic that he had in Livingston. So I brought Echo with me. This horse, I walk her into the arena, and she just starts bucking in a circle around me on a lunch line, because that's just how it goes sometimes.
You're like, perfect. This is just what I envisioned.
And I see Buck turn over, and obviously this is a huge person in the horse industry, like someone I look up to the utmost degree. And Buck looks over, and he just nods and looks away. No emotion, nothing like, oh, what did you bring to my clinic? Everybody else was on broke horses. I brought Echo.
Yeah.
What else are you gonna do? So but she went ahead, and I just took her for what she was that day. And when I was ready, I got up on her. And I didn't care what anybody else thought about her. I didn't compare her. I think I'm going to bring that to every new horse. They are what they are. Meet them where they're at.
That is huge. I think that point of not caring and really wanting to do, to honor the horse and where they're at is really huge. Because I think a lot of times between that and ego, which you mentioned a lot of times, trying to get our kind of feeling of being okay, our feelings of self-worth from how these horses are behaving. If you can let go of those two things, where you're no longer worried about, what people think or what people are saying, and you're really worried about, what your horse is telling you, what they're trying to communicate, and kind of able to let go of, like, this isn't a statement about me. This is just our relationship. We're just developing and growing our relationship. Those, I think, are two huge pieces to kind of take and move forward that can really change the way that you interact with horses.
Yeah. And it's tough in the horse world. The horse world is a really unique one, and it is kind of a judgy one. There are always going to be those people at the start line saying, hey, I spent 20 grand on my horse, and this is Sunfrost on the papers, and this horse was bred for it.
Yeah.
And when you look at a Mustang, it's like, what were you bred for? What are we able to accomplish? What's standing in our way? Is it your bloodlines? Like, are you a thoroughbred cross Mustang? Are you one of the more drafty ones? Like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Who are you, and who am I? And over again, they just show us, like, who cares? Put me down better than you pick me up.
Yeah.
And see where you can go. It's farther than you think.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think a lot of us, you talked about how you kind of put a lot of your expectations on Echo's shoulder, and she didn't really care. She wasn't really having it, you know? She's like, we're going to do this the way that feels good to me. But I do think that's a big piece to why there's so much tension in the horse community, because I think a lot of us look at our horses as a sense of worth and worthiness.
Mm-hmm.
When, when you step back and kind of build that relationship and learn those things that they're trying to teach you, listen to those things they're trying to tell you, that definitely becomes less important, more just, a side note. And you can really lean into like, what are you going to learn on this journey? Where is it going to go? What might you be able to do next?
Yeah. But if you're going to get a Mustang, get one for partnership. That's what it is. It's a relationship you're developing, and relationships are rocky.
Yeah. Rocky, take time, take learning. Not always fun, then sometimes amazing.
You're going to have so many more. You're going to spend so many hours having hard moments before you have the good ones, and you have to just trust that the good ones are coming. It's like anything, you're gonna.
Yeah, a lot like life, right? Whatever you expect, it may not turn out that way. So just hang on and see what happens and stay in it and keep showing up. I think it's huge.
And be willing to learn. Be willing to restart.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
dig back into the books and the YouTube and pick trainers you like and find the stuff that doesn't work for you. It's all the stuff they say with horsemanship. It's not a one size fits all, and no one has the answers. And I've tried. Trust me, I've really tried.
Yeah, I mean, you had two people that thought they had the answer.
Yeah.
Still didn't work. So. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just how many times was I going to turn and say someone else is going to do it better? Someone else has the answers.
Yeah.
It's just
and I mean, it's hard. So when you get to those stuck points, it seems like it would be really great to just have someone step in, kind of help get you past that. But I'm sure that because you stuck with it and kind of took it back into your hands, that's probably where you really learned a lot, because it sounds like you really focused in. You're like, I'm going to have to figure this out. Like, it's in my hands. It's up to me.
Yeah. I mean, it helps. She's in my backyard. So there's a certain amount of like how realistic this is for people. It's when I think about someone who's like seeking a Mustang, everyone's got different situations. Maybe you've got a barn, maybe you've got a mentor, maybe you've got no horse training experience at all, which I would not recommend getting a Mustang if you have no horse training experience.
Yeah.
Start differently, please. Everyone's going to have different circumstances, but consistency is consistency. And I was in a situation where I could do that, where I could finish work and then be there. And if someone's not in the position to be that, you can't blame the horse.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think even with consistency, it doesn't have to be that something huge every day. It can be just those little wins regularly over and over again, till one day they don't even want to be near you, and the next they're coming and checking you out and seeing what's going on.
And it's not realistic for everybody. And it's, and I'm sure this is the case with some horses as well. I think you can get away with it a little more with horses that are raised around humans. You can put them down and pick them back up, and they're about the same. I've noticed with some of our quarter horses, and that's what you get with breeding a little bit and raising them in hand. I'm curious to see in the future if I have a chance to start a younger Mustang instead of an older one, and seeing if that kind of like recurrence interval is shorter.
Yeah, it is interesting. There's definitely a lot of variance between them. I have 3 and they're all totally different personalities, and just everyone I'm like, oh, well, that's not what I was expecting. So it's definitely an interesting learning journey.
Yeah. What HMAs are your horses from?
So one is Antelope Hills, I think. The one in Wyoming, not Nevada. I can't remember if it's Antelope Hills or Antelope Valley. It might be Antelope. Okay. Anyway, she's the one that was supposed to be my daughter, so I didn't know. I can never remember hers for some reason. But then the other one's Divide Basin, Wyoming, and Triple B, Nevada. Yes. So yeah, and they're all very different, but lots of fun.
Yeah, everyone's got their HMAs they like to and are interested in.
Yeah.
I have no idea. I'm not a Mustang person. I just happen to have one.
Yeah, I know. We didn't really go off HMAs. It was more like, oh, that looks good. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So
trots sound.
Yeah, but you really never do fully know what you're getting until they're there and they're with you and you're learning about them.
I really appreciate you kind of hearing Echo's story. It's neat. I've never really talked through it in this way before. My friends and family have gotten like snippets of this. So this was really special for me. So thank you so much.
Thanks for being here. Tell everybody where they can find you if they want to follow you, see videos. You have some really cool videos up of the events, and it looks pretty wild. It looks pretty fun and a lot of craziness.
I'm not great with social media. My handle, I think, is Addie Gonzalez 06 on Instagram, but I do have a private account, so I don't.
So maybe you don't want people to find you. That's okay. That's all right.
Yeah, I'm not much of a social media person. I might post some more Echo stuff in the future, but I am looking at. There's another auction here in June in Livingston, so there might be, maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'll just go see if there's something in the pen.
Yeah, we know what'll happen if you just go see.
Yeah,
but that's all right. I mean, once you get one, it's kind of hard to just stop there, and they need a friend. So
why write anything else?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing your story and your experiences with Echo. It's really neat to just see the way different journeys unfold with the Mustang, and really cool to hear how you learned and grew and really committed to being there for Echo and to doing right by her, even though there's bumps along the road, which I think happens for all of us that are really trying to do right for them. And to just see what an exciting end. As you were telling the story of it, I was like, this should be a movie. So inspiring, where you just have this huge journey and people talking poorly about the horse, and then they just do something incredible. Together you guys did something really fun, really neat, and inspiring. So thanks for being here.
Thank you for joining us and learning about horses that heal and the humans who help them. We hope you'll continue with us on this journey. We'd love for you to subscribe on your favorite platform and follow The Touch of a Mustang on any of the major social media outlets. Please share with your friends, anyone who loves horses, or anyone who might be struggling and could benefit from this message. If you have felt the healing power of horses or help them in their divinely appointed mission, please reach out. We want to hear your story. As we say goodbye, always remember that the horse is always there to help you.